Welcome to Satsang. So beautiful to be together tonight in our newly multicolored Jopuri. Everything's multicolored here this evening. It's interesting because the environment here is so exquisite and so pure that it's always really beautiful when there's all sorts of different lights and different colors and whatnot, but it's always also this slight shock to the senses from the otherwise equally exquisite but uncolored, lit up environment. But here we are on the first day of Navratri, this sacred time where we worship that energy. In the Hindu tradition, with every male aspect of the divine, there's always a female aspect with him. If there's anything that the male aspect actually has to get done. So it's not that there aren't any aspects of the divine that are not in a male-female counterpart relationship, but if you look at the main actions, the main tasks, creation by Brahma, sustenance by Vishnu, dissolving of that which is old to make room for that which is new by Shiva. And of course many of the avatars of Vishnu, those that are here in human form, Bhagwan Krishna, Bhagwan Ram, that are here very specifically in that service of sustenance, but not just any kind of sustenance, an actual light-filled, dharma-filled sustenance. When the divine incarnates in form, in human form to bring back light to the darkness, there's always a female counterpart, and that's the Shakti, that's the energy. And so it's such a beautiful awareness that it's not just, oh yeah, it's nice to have, the woman also. It's that quite literally without her, the work of Brahma, the work of Vishnu, or the incarnations, the work of Shiva, it could not happen. And so these days are days of really celebrating that energy. And of course, that energy doesn't only exist in female gendered beings. I mean, there's a divine feminine in not just women, but in men as well. Regardless of what our chromosomal situation may be or the structure of our genitalia may be, we've all got masculine and feminine energies within us. And this is a time of really, whether you are a man or you are a woman, a time of really honoring that divine feminine energy within you and within those around you. really tapping into that creative energy within you, that energy that makes things happen. Not just that OCD gets your to-do list done, but the actual energy of your blossoming. The actual energy of the creation of you, of the sustenance of you, and of the dissolving of that within you, which is old and stale, no longer needed, holding you back, keeping you stuck within you. Because of course this trinity of the divine, the creation, the sustenance, the dissolution, it's not linear, it's cyclical. So it's not, oh, the end is Lord Shiva or Ma Kali or Ma Durga have come in and destroyed and now it's over. It's a dissolution of that, as I was saying, that keeps you stuck, holds you back, is old, so that the work of creation can begin again. I think about it like the leaves of the trees that dry and then fall in the autumn. Well, once they're dead and dried, they're no longer of any use. They're not doing photosynthesis. They're not giving us flowers or fruit. They're not even alive anymore. And so this divine universe has them actually fall to the ground, where they're covered typically with snow or with some level of frost. Come March, April, May, those leaves have become the fertile soil for that which is going to grow in the springtime. So it's not leaves dead over. It's this cycle is now cycling in such a way that that which is old and dry and now becomes the fertile soil for new growth. So it's a beautiful time to find that energy within you. And without going into too many details, because I don't want to take all of our satsang time with it, but I did promise that I would begin with it. Today is the day of Navratri. Each day is dedicated to a different aspect of the Mother Goddess, what we call the Nav Durga. So the 9 different forms of Durga. And today is the day dedicated to the goddess Shailputri, who is said to be the daughter of the Himalayas. And so she's this embodiment of Mother Nature. She's the daughter of the Himalayas, this embodiment of Mother Nature. And obviously an incarnation of Ma Parvati. And each of these goddesses has a specific chakra, a specific energy center that they're associated with. And her energy center is the Muladhara Chakra, what we call the Root Chakra. And so as we connect with her, because all of the energy rises up. So in praying to and connecting with Goddess Shailputri, it's this opening of the sacred energy within the body to begin its ascent through us. So it's a very sacred time if you're looking to awaken, connect with that sacred energy, whether we say kundalini energy or just spiritual energy or sacred energy, but that energy within us. So it begins in our root chakra, the Muladhara Chakra, and then it rises through us. And each of the goddesses is also associated with a particular demon, the personification of ego and ignorance, because within Hinduism, we don't believe in evil. We don't believe that there's a sense of evil to the core. We believe that actually all of us are divine at our core, but that we get shrouded in ignorance, covered in ignorance, and when we are in ignorance, we falsely identify with the body, and when we falsely identify with the body and the false self, acts happen through us that end up giving us what you would call bad karma. Means bitter fruit from our actions. But it's all ignorance. It's all ego. And so the personification of ego, that demon, that asura who goddess Shailputri did battle with and conquered, is the form of ego. Say shumbha. And it means that sense of I-ness, that sense of separation between me and others. As long as I think I am separate from God, separate from everyone, separate from the earth, well, A, I suffer. B, I bring suffering to others. Because if we are separate, then you are simply an object. Because if I'm living in that illusion of separation, it means I've identified only as the physical body. I've objectified myself, and therefore objectified others. And if someone is an object, there's only two possibilities. Either I can use them for my personal pleasure, maybe to get ahead. So whether it's sensual pleasure, whether it's somehow to get ahead in work, whatever it may be, I can use this person in some way that benefits me. Or I have to remove that person. So either they can be used or they are a hurdle on my path to be removed. So that sense of ego called shumbha was the asura, the demon who goddess Shailputri conquered. So today, on this day, it's a beautiful time to just begin that connection to the divine energy within you. Don't worry about remembering all of the details, but anchor yourself in your Muladhara chakra with an awareness that that's really the seat of this energy. So the lower chakras are not things to be avoided, pushed away, denied, repressed, suppressed, because then it just blocks the energy. You can't say, oh, well, I'd like my kundalini energy to rise, but I'd like it to begin with my heart, please. The energy begins where it begins, which is in our Muladhara chakra. But too many of us push away those lower forms of energy. And then we end up depriving ourselves of that energy as it rises. So there's nothing within the self to fear or oppress or repress. It's just an awareness of different levels of consciousness, different levels through which we interact with the world. So you anchor in that Muladhara chakra. And as you do, because of course, some of the energy of the lower chakras is all about objectification, right? It's all about how can I use you for my pleasure. And so as you're anchoring in that, to ensure that you don't end up getting lost in some of those energies, you allow yourself to do an inner, kinder, gentler battle with shumbha, with the ego, that keeps you separate. I never like to think of actually waging war inside of us, because ultimately at the end of the day you're going to bed with the loser. Right? I mean, it's all in you. If you fight with a colleague, at the end of the day you can each go home to your house. You fight with a family member, at the end of the day you can each go into your own rooms. Even a spouse, okay, one of you takes to the couch for the night or the guest bedroom for the night. But when you're doing war with an aspect of yourself, guess who you're going to sleep with? So I don't think about it as battle, but just a sense of clarity, a sense of awareness. The ego shrivels in the face of awareness. And so when you really look at it and you realize, I'm not separate, I'm not an object, I'm not a body, I'm spirit. And since I'm spirit, so are you. So there is no place I end and you begin. You are not something to be used or gotten out of the way. Actually, the same spirit that flows through me flows through you. We are one. So that enables that energy then to start rising, and it enables us to be free of that particular form of the ego. So, since we began with that, before taking a question that's come in advance, which is where I usually begin, I wanted to just open it up to questions here. Questions? Yes, in the back.
Good evening. Thank you for taking a question.
Of course.
To address the way my question has to do with this doing battle with the ego and allowing something to let it go. You gave the example yesterday of, and in other instances, of Mother Ganga giving it to the river. And I've done puja here to let it burn in the fire. But if there is something persistent that continues to haunt, how?
Okay, I get it. So, a critical aspect of letting it go, suraj isko band kar deना उनका. A critical aspect of letting go is forgiveness. I can't just let go into nothingness. I can only let it go once I have forgiven. Whether it's what someone did to me, whether it's myself or what I've done to someone else. The grudge and the pain against, or the anger with the other, or the guilt with the self. In both cases, I have to really forgive. Now, the difficulty that most people have with forgiveness is we give ourselves way too big of a role in the cosmic cycle of karma. So there's something within us that thinks, if I forgive, somehow that makes it okay. As though somehow the universe has appointed me the decider of what's okay and what's not. I've been given the role of the grand, capital C, condoner. We haven't been given that. We haven't been given the ability to impact someone else's karmic journey. Because a lot of us think if I forgive, somehow that absolves someone of what they've done, that I have to hold on to it until they get what's coming, because it was wrong. And that's really normal and natural. Especially when what has happened is really objectively awful. There's a natural sense of a commitment to, an attachment to, making sure that that person gets their due. The dilemma comes with the idea that somehow, in order for them to get their due, I have to stay stuck to them. As though somehow I'm God's note keeper. And if I'm not following God around with a little notepad saying, remember this guy, what he did to me, that somehow the universe is going to forget. Or that somehow if I forgive, then he or she will be absolved and won't get what's coming. And that's just not how it works. They're two completely different things. What someone has done is their action, their karma. They will get the fruits of that. Separate from you. Separate from your reaction. You could hold on to it till the day you die. You could forgive them now. It's not going to impact the fruits of their karma. It's like if I plant an apple seed, it's going to grow into an apple tree. I don't have to stand over it going, apples, apples, remember apples, that looks like maybe an orange sprout, not apples. The nature of the seed knows apples. In the same way, that's how karma works. So our job then becomes to realize that we forgive, not to absolve them, but we forgive because we deserve to be free. And because not forgiving keeps us stuck. Not forgiving links us forever to that thing that happened that shouldn't have happened. Now, it happened once, or maybe it happened 50 times. But that's then. It happened in the past. If I don't forgive, I'm taking my entire life, my joy, my peace, my freedom, and I'm offering it, as I always say, on the altar of someone else's. Ignorance, confusion, arrogance, greed. Now they've already hurt you. Why would you then, in response to them already hurting you once or 50 times, Then take everything that's left, what you've got, your most precious thing in life, and willingly offer it to them. It doesn't make any sense. But if we don't forgive, that's what we're doing. So we have to bring ourselves to a place of being able to see them in our mind's eye and literally say, I forgive you. Not that what you did was right. Not that I want you to do it again. Not that maybe I even ever want to see you again. But I'm letting go of my end of the karmic cord. See, if you and I are holding on to two ends of a cord, and there's a lot of tension in it, it doesn't require both of us to let go. It actually just requires one person to let go. And all of the tension in that rope disappears. So we forgive so that we can be free. Now the dilemma with that is, a lot of us hold on to this pain as really a kind of identity. We become the ones who were abused, abandoned, betrayed, cheated, lied to, harmed. And that becomes a whole identity. And there's all these aspects of my life that are built around that identity. Which means if I forgive, then suddenly I have to step up to brand new plates of my life that I may have been able to avoid stepping up to for a long time. And so this is where we have to really have the courage that says, I deserve freedom. I deserve joy. I deserve love. I deserve peace. And if it means that I no longer have an excuse to be an addict, okay, well, we'll deal with that. I'll deal with my addiction then. I'll stop blaming it on this thing. If it means I no longer have an excuse to be depressed, we'll deal with the depression. If it means I no longer have an excuse to not trust people, to not open my heart, well, then either I can make a conscious decision not to and just be aware that I no longer have an excuse, but I've made a very conscious decision. Because of course we have the right. We've got free will. We can decide to open our hearts or not. And so we then decide, I'm going to open it or I'm not. Without needing to rely on the crutch of, well, I can't trust because I was traumatized, therefore you will have to excuse me from X, Y, and Z. You know, it's like, not to belittle it, I personally have experienced a great deal of trauma, but it's like that cartoon, I think it was Calvin and Hobbes, but I can't guarantee it was that one, where he used to, I think it was him, he used to sort of forge all of those, please excuse Calvin from school today, notes, right? And they would say the funniest things, I can't remember now, 30 years later, but I used to laugh at him sort of forging all of these, please excuse Calvin from this exam, or please excuse Calvin from school, or it's like us, essentially, using that which happened as these get out of living your life notes. Please excuse me from living my life because, see, I was traumatized. Please excuse me from living my life because, see, I was abused. And so we have to be prepared to not have any more of those notes. to recognize I hereby am letting go of my sense of right to a note that excuses me from stepping up to the plate of my life. I still have free will. Nobody can force me to do anything. But I no longer have a ready-made, forged excuse for why I'm not loving, living, serving, being healthy. And that's the key for a lot of us, is we've got to be prepared to jump into that unknown if we're going to let go of the crutch we're holding on to. But we realize that that which we're holding on to is keeping us stuck, is the thing keeping us from living our lives. And so it takes a bit of a leap of faith of, I don't know. I don't know who I'm going to be when I'm no longer the one who was abused. I don't know what I'm going to do when suddenly I'm afraid to trust. And I can't say, well, you'll have to excuse me because, see, I was, And in that leap of faith, we let go of the proverbial training wheels or floaties, or pick your analogy. And we actually accept this beautiful invitation of life with all of its uncertainties and with all of its possibilities. Yes. Other questions? Well, I have one that was handed to me as I walked in, which I will read and give anyone else time to think if they have one. I tell my 4-year-old son to pray to God to help him get well soon. How do you explain to a 4-year-old the concept of God? So, connecting children to God is one of the most important and beautiful things. Don't try to explain to them in a very fixed way, because then they will grow up believing that that is all God is. So for example, let's say in the home we are Krishna devotees, for example. Well, we all understand that Bhagwan Krishna is the expression of the divine we worship, but that ultimately that divine is infinite. In fact, Bhagwan Krishna himself says it, that in whatever form the devotee worships me, I appear to the devotee in that form. But if you say to a 4-year-old, this is God, and you show them a picture or a deity of Bhagwan Krishna, the child doesn't have the concept to understand what we understand, manifestation, embodiment. So the child is literally going to grow up to believe God is blue, God plays the flute. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. Loving Bhagwan Krishna is beautiful, but if they can have an idea actually of an infinite presence, that's also really beautiful. And so you can give them both. You can give them, this is one form of God. Let them love an image of God that's easy for them to see and understand and connect with. but also help them understand, for example, who wakes you up in the morning? When you're asleep, who wakes you? Right? You're not there. Who reminds you to breathe? Who's breathing for you? Who wakes you up in the morning? Who's breathing for you? Who makes the sun rise? You were sleeping. You weren't on the job. Who makes the sun rise? Who makes the flower petals open up in such a beautiful way to the sun? All of these things, this is God. Who makes a caterpillar turn into a butterfly? Who makes a seed sprout and become a tree? So these are all expressions of God. This is God. So to have a child understand that there's this force in the universe that is beautiful, is benevolent, is a force of love that's holding them, carrying them, waking them up even from deep sleep, keeping them breathing even when they're sleeping. It's going to make the sun rise and it's going to make the flowers open. That's a really beautiful way for children to grow in faith. My slight dilemma with the other part of the question is that I tell him to pray to God to get well soon. Now the dilemma with that is, what if he doesn't get well soon? Right? What if he's got a flu and he prays to God to get well soon and he does, and then he has a friend who has leukemia? And he prays for his friend to get well soon, but the friend dies. Well, then you've just lost his faith in God. Then you've injured this child on a level that's worse even than the loss of the friend from leukemia. Because now either God doesn't love him and listen to his prayers, or God is not good, God is bad. And it brings up all kinds of complexes around God that lead to people many decades later saying things like, well, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. Right? We've lost in some way the connection to religion. You know, if you ask most people who say that, well, that's interesting. Tell me about your earlier experiences with religion. Well, almost everyone has been sort of burned by religion in some way. Either there's a teaching in religion that doesn't work, so I'm not a heterosexual, I'm any of the other varieties of that. My religion says that's a sin, so I no longer am religious. Or I'm a female. My religion says that I should pray to be born a male, so I've decided I'm done with religion. Or I prayed to God with love and devotion to save my friend who had leukemia and my friend died. So I decided I'm done with God. These are the sorts of things that tend to turn people off of religion. And this is why I always say that the more people who say I'm spiritual but not religious, this is something that as a religious person, I take as a huge failing on our part. Like, I understand it fully, and I certainly would never tell someone not to be that. But to myself and other religious leaders, to me, that's our failing, that we've somehow turned religion into something that even people who want a connection with the divine don't want to be part of. So my point around this is that as long as we turn God into a wish-fulfilling tree, as long as we turn God into the infinite form of Santa Claus with the list of who's been good and who's been bad and who's going to get what, well then inevitably we're going to break a lot of hearts. And we're going to have a lot of people lose a lot of faith. And so I would be really cautious about the God is a vending machine model of prayer. Now, yes, prayer is beautiful. Have faith. God can do miracles. But especially for a child, that's a very tenuous place. So if you're going to have the child pray to God to get well, I would also simultaneously make sure that I'm helping the child understand that whatever comes to us in life comes as an opportunity to get close to God. And for some of us, it's in long, healthy lives. For some of us, it's in long, sick lives. For some of us, it's in short, healthy lives that just end too early. For some, it's in short, sick lives. But every one of them is an opportunity to get closer to God. None is a reward. None is a punishment. God is not playing favorites. So along with the teaching of praying to God and understanding the miraculous power of God, I would make sure that the child understood that God doesn't actually have any preference of health over sickness or life over death. Because God is with us in life as in death, in sickness as in health. And that we've just been given this body to do some work here on earth. And some of our work takes a long time, some of our work is a lot shorter. Just to make sure that they don't lose faith when something they prayed for didn't happen. Because otherwise you'll disconnect them. You mean well, but you end up actually disconnecting them further. Any other questions? Yes, we'll take it last.
Good evening. Thank you so much. What is the purpose of struggle? Is struggle also a construct? Thank you.
Is struggle simply a construct? Well, I mean, there are certain viewpoints, and I won't go into them because it's a long and deep philosophical debate. You could say everything is a construct. But instead, what I would say is there's two different aspects of struggle. One which keeps us stuck, one which sets us free. The type of struggle that sets us free is the type of struggle, if you think about a butterfly pushing its way out of the cocoon. Right? There's that great story of the man who comes out one day and he sees a cocoon hanging from a tree in front of his house, and it's swinging back and forth, and there's a little crack in the cocoon, and he sees the butterfly's head. And he sees the butterfly try to squeeze itself through the crack. But she doesn't seem to be able to. And so in the most kind-hearted of intentions, the man goes in the house and he gets himself a pair of scissors, and he comes out and he gently, gently, gently cuts the cocoon. And the butterfly then essentially flops out of the cocoon onto the ground. And he went and picked her up and tried to get her to fly, but her wings weren't actually developed. Her wings were wet and soggy and shriveled. Because actually it's the act of pushing her body through the cocoon that sends that energy, mass, matter from the center of the body like a caterpillar into the wings like a butterfly. So in that case, the struggle was essential. The struggle to be born, right? I mean, think about the struggle of the mother, the struggle of the baby. It's setting us free. And we all can look back on our lives and think of such struggles, things we have been through, with freedom on the other side. But then there's what most of us struggle with most of the time. I'm going to say 90% of struggle is in the second category. And that's the category of the games of the mind. That's the struggle of, it's not fair. I'm so nice to her, and I do everything I possibly can for her. Why is she so obnoxious to me? Why does she always try to cut me? Why does she steal my work? Why does she tell people bad things about me? That's not fair. Or that says, it's not fair. I'm the one who does all of the work and he gets all the credit. Just because the boss likes him more, just because they golf together, this is not fair. The type of struggle that kills our mind. We're eating, we're thinking about it. We're walking, we're thinking about it. We lie down to go to sleep, we're thinking about it. We're hugging our loved one, we're thinking about it. We're losing the moments of our life in those struggles of the mind. And that's where our practice of meditation, our practice of introspection comes in. Meditation that actually enables us to learn that we are not slaves to thoughts, that we're not slaves to the games of the mind, to just bring the mind back, bring it back, that lo and behold, we actually do have control over it. It is not a runaway train. And our practice of introspection and contemplation to really guide us of, wow, I'm finding myself so angry at this person or so jealous or so resentful. Why is that? Why is it having such an impact on me? Why this compared to so many other things that I can just blow off? And we really introspect so that we can gain insight and understanding and ultimately freedom. So the discrimination is required because you don't want to become lazy in the first batch of struggles. Right? You don't want to be the butterfly that says, oh, it's just a game of my mind that I'm actually supposed to become something else. I'll just sit here in this cocoon forever. You want to be able to clearly recognize which struggles we are supposed to fight for and which struggles are those we've created. And there's no equation, unfortunately. I wish I could say to you, well, if A plus B equals C, then yes. But there isn't an equation. One of the key ways of knowing is ask yourself, what is the ideal resolution of the struggle? If I had a magic wand and I could fix this struggle, what would the outcome be? And if that outcome is essentially you versus someone else, now I'm the one with more Facebook followers. Now I'm the one who got the promotion. Now I'm the one the boss likes. Now I'm the one everyone's looking at. You can be pretty sure that that struggle is a game of the mind, and don't fight for it. That's where you need to become free. But if the end of the struggle is a sense of expansion, not of your pocket or your bank account or your possessions or area of influence, but an expansion of yourself. So the end is, I finally have the courage to do what I'm meant to do here on earth. To write the music, to make the art, to join the ashram, to become an entrepreneur, to whatever it is that I'm feeling really called to. That's going to bring me expansion of the self in my presence here on earth. Then that's a struggle to push yourself through. And lastly, if it's a struggle where the end result is a better situation for many, then it's definitely a struggle to push through. Then we find ourselves in the land of the war of the Mahabharata, where, it was a struggle. I mean, there was Arjuna on a battlefield facing family members. Huge struggle. Not for himself, not for his ego, not for petty stuff. He had already let it go what they had done. He said to Krishna, forget it. Don't worry, it's okay. We don't need anything. But he had a job, a duty, to bring back Dharma. And to bring back the Dharma, he needed to struggle in the fight. And so as we today fight collectively against human rights abuses, against discrimination, against violence, against terrorism, against what is happening to Mother Earth, that's a struggle we need to struggle with. That's not a struggle where the solution is just, how can I find my peace in the midst of everyone else's difficult situation? How can I live in heaven while everyone else is living in hell? That's not the end goal. The end goal is, how can I be in enough peace internally that I can be a warrior, a struggler, a fighter, pushing our way through a dark cocoon of injustice, of destruction, into a world that we know we need to live in, a world of true freedom. So these are struggles that you don't want to say, oh, it's just a construct and I'm going to, therefore not engage because I'm trying to free myself from constructs. These are things we're meant to be engaged in. If we had never struggled, we'd never be born. I mean, you are here because you struggled. Those who sat in the womb and said, just a construct, those are the ones who didn't get born. The mothers who said, I'm not going to push. Just a construct, forget it. They are the ones through whom life did not happen. So we must struggle. But we don't struggle for our own mind games. We don't struggle for our place, our right, our numbers, our this, our that. We struggle for our freedom, for our blossoming, for our expansion. And we struggle to bring back Dharma, to bring back light, to bring healing to the world. Beautiful. Have a beautiful, beautiful first evening of Navratri. A beautiful morning and day to those joining from all over the world. And I look so forward to seeing many of you tomorrow when we dive into Goddess Brahmacharini, the second goddess of the second day of Navratri.